Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, Deputy Minister of Finance, Abdikafar Ilmi Hange, and other honorable guests present, World Bank Country Manager Christina Sevison, and all protocols are observed. Now we are going to officially start the Somali Economic Update Report this evening. This is the 10th edition of the Somali Economic Update this year on 2025. It is about boosting domestic revenue mobilization to enhance service delivery and strengthen the social contract for Somalia. First of all, before I go through, I would like to welcome for her opening remarks, Christina Sevison, Country Manager for Somalia. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister Abdikafar Elmi Hange, senior government officials and development partners, members of the press, World Bank colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this launch of the 10th edition of the Somalia Economic Update, a flagship report for Somalia that we produce on an annual basis. The Somalia Economic Update offers a platform for discussion on key economic trends and risks, opportunities for sectoral improvements, and macroeconomic and social impacts of policies, thereby playing a crucial role in the country's economic policy dialogue. This year, the special topic of this report focuses on the critical role of domestic resource mobilization to enhance service delivery and strengthening the social contract. I'm happy to see the good participation of government officials with the Deputy Minister joining me here in the room. And it's also encouraging to see other development partners and private sector participants, as well as civil society that are watching on different platforms. Welcome, and again, I look forward to a constructive discussion. In my opening remarks, I would like to focus on three key issues: economic growth and risks going forward, domestic resource mobilization, and direction for policy reforms. First of all, Somalia's recent economic performance has been encouraging, with growth hovering around 4%, and in 2024, it was 4.1%. But Somalia faces many risks going forward, with important transitions, upcoming elections, the security transition, as well as a very challenging global environment. We expect that economic prospects will remain positive in the medium term, again, despite these heightened risks, but again, they are significant. Reforms that the government implemented as part of the HIPIC, the debt relief process, and joining the East Africa community will have a positive impact on growth. For example, the enactment of laws and regulations on financial institutions, the Takaful law and income tax law, as well as other reforms on electricity, fisheries, and petroleum sectors, lay the foundation for resilient private sector development and address some of the key constraints to job creation. Creating job opportunities for youth is a critical issue to address in terms of reducing poverty, reducing vulnerability, and prevent conflict. Going forward, again, the risks are significant, and the government will need to continue its reform path to ensure that institutions are effective in supporting an accelerated growth path that will bring Somalia close to its Vision 2060 and the ambitions also set out in the recent National Transformation Plan. In doing that, the government will need to be mindful of the multiple risks to growth that Somalia will need to address, including climate vulnerability, security threats, and external shocks amid declining foreign aid flows. Somalia's journey towards stability and growth hinges on domestic resource mobilization, and this is the specific topic that we are digging into in this report. Boosting domestic revenues is essential to improve the social contract between the government and Somali citizens across the country, investing in health, in education, in infrastructure, and again, to support the long-term growth. Efforts to enhance DRM are imperative for decreasing dependency on external aid and fostering fiscal independence, forming a crucial dimension of the broader reform agenda. As Somalia continues to fortify its fiscal capacity, it sets the foundation for a more resilient and self-sufficient state, capable of navigating the complexities of its socioeconomic landscape. Recent efforts have shown the potential and results in terms of increasing revenues, but the pace of domestic resource mobilization really needs to accelerate significantly to ensure more and better basic services to the population and support Somalia's state-building agenda. Policies that maximize domestic resource mobilization should be prioritized. Such policies include expanding the tax base and deepening customs revenue. Improvement in tax administration can also support voluntary compliance and revenue mobilization. Strengthening of the fiscal federalism framework, however, remains an essential prerequisite for enhanced revenue mobilization. Its absence creates distortions in the economic activity and places an additional burden on taxpayers, eroding the social contract. Finally, when citizens pay taxes, they expect government to use public funds to provide public services. Given the government's limited ability to provide the extended package of public services, service delivery in Somalia remains a shared task among various levels of government and the private sector. In conclusion, welcome to everyone. I would like to reiterate our commitment to support Somalia in its development journey. The World Bank Development Policy Financing fosters important reforms to ensure sustainable public finances and resilient private sector development, while investment project financing provides capacity building and support the reform implementation in critical sectors of the economy, including for public finance reforms. The Somali economic updates and other analytical and advisory products provide an evidence-based platform for debate and key policy reforms. I also would like here to thank our multi-partnership fund partners, development partners, many of them joining online, for their contributions, and which really makes it possible for us to do this kind of analytical work. Thank you again, and I look forward to an exciting discussion, an important discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. Now, forwardly, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Minister for his keynote address. Thank you, Excellency. Welcome.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. And thank you very much, Christina, the World Bank Country Manager. I would like to start by welcoming also the government officials, colleagues, distinguished guests, the colleagues from World Bank, the development partners, media representatives here. It is indeed an honor to join you today for the launch of the 10th edition of the Somali Economic Update. As said, this year's theme is in boosting domestic revenue mobilization to enhance the service delivery and strengthen the social contract, which is both timely and critical as we embark on the implementation of the National Transformation Plan 2025 to 2029 and align our national agenda with the long-term vision of Somalia's Centennial Vision 2060. This conversation comes at a moment of a global focus. The international aid landscape is rapidly evolving, and countries such as Somalia must adapt to growing fiscal uncertainty. For Somalia, this presents both a challenge and an opportunity to build resilience, deepen reforms, and chart a more self-reliant development path. Domestic revenue mobilization is at the heart of this effort. It is not only a fiscal necessity, but also a fundamental pillar of state building and long-term stability. Over recent years, Somalia has made commendable progress. In 2024, domestic revenue reached 369.4 million, a 12% increase from the previous year, and more than threefold the level of 2016. These gains reflected deliberate reforms to expand and broaden the tax base, digitalize tax administration, and strengthen tax compliance, notably the passage of the modern income tax law in May 2025 and other financial legislation mark critical steps towards more transparent and predictable revenue systems. Custom reforms have also advanced, with the Somalia Custom Automation System, SOMCAS, which is now operational in Mogadishu and Kismayo alone. Custom revenue rose by 10 percentage points in 2024, demonstrating the impact of improved systems and enforcement. Intergovernmental fiscal coordination has likewise progressed, with agreements reached on a unified taxpayer identification system, performance-based grants, and harmonized tax framework across the federal and state levels. Despite these achievements, Somalia continues to face serious structural challenges, security threats posed by terrorist groups, climate shocks, constrained fiscal space, and declining aid flows create headwinds to our reform momentum. Currently, domestic revenue stands at approximately 3% of the GDP, far below what's needed to meet the aspirations of our citizens and being one of the lowest in the sub-Saharan African countries. Closing this gap remains a national priority for Somalia. To this end, we are also advancing new implementation measures under our medium-term revenue strategy, including full legal implementation of the new income tax law. It's been passed just recently, and we are very much focused and prioritizing its implementation across the band, across the federal member state solutions and the federal capital city Mogadishu. Nationwide taxpayer registration and compliance campaigns are ongoing. Transition to Somali custom automated system for all custom operations is another urgent priority for us. Intensified sales tax enforcement, especially targeting informal sector compliance, is ongoing, and we are expecting in the coming 3 months will be the most critical point for us to create a shift from the targets that we are currently achieving in regarding to the revenue collected from the sales tax. Efforts are also underway to harmonize custom tariffs, align with international standards and EAC, East African Community frameworks. We recognize the political dialogue and fiscal federalism remains essential to realizing this ambition. However, we must also confront a stark reality. Somalia remains highly vulnerable to external financial shocks. According to the IMF estimates, the US aid alone have reached 8.4% of the GDP from 2022 to 2024, accounting for nearly 30% of all of budget support to Somalia. We have modeled 2 external aid reduction scenarios, with potential reductions ranging from 400 million to 600 million, which would have profound impact on our GDP, tax collections, and public service delivery. These developments underscore the urgency of accelerating domestic revenue mobilization, improving expenditure efficiency, and ensuring that every dollar collected delivers real impact, especially in the areas of education, healthcare, water access, and more importantly, infrastructure. In conclusion, I would like to extend my deepest appreciation to the World Bank for its continued analytical and financial support, and to the other many public servants and other development partners who have contributed in the producing of this essential Somali Economic 10th Edition report. This economic update serves not only as a progress report, but also a call for action to deepen our reforms, to engage more stakeholders, and to ensure that domestic revenue is meaningfully linked to the lives and the well-being of our citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, His Excellency Dr. Elmi Hange, Deputy Minister of Finance, Federal Government of Somalia. Now I would like to give the floor to Abdullahi Odrago, economist and the lead author of the report, to give us the presentation, as well as Alma Rushapora for their presentations. Welcome on board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending this event. I'd like to thank Christina, the country manager, and the deputy minister for the introduction speech. This economic update is the 10th edition, and it comprised of two parts. The first part is the macroeconomic development, and the second part is the special topic, which will be presented by Alma. So this is to give a quick summary of the draft. We have launched the draft online, and those who want the full draft can download it online. And also we have the printed copy. But through this presentation, guys, we will just summarize key points for the audience. Okay, so the main messages from part one are the following. Despite challenges, Somalia's economic shows resilience in 2024, driven by livestock, agricultural, though poverty remains a significant issue. Improved fiscal performance at federal government level due to increased domestic revenue and external grants, though domestic revenue remains also low. Debt relief has substantially reduced Somalia external debt and changing debt sustainability and increasing fiscal space. Outlook remains positive, but foreign aid cuts are dampening growth. Downside risk exists, and then through this report, we will go to some of them along with the positive risk also that could impact growth. Reform to support sustainable public finance and resilience private sector development are critical to mitigate current risk and sustain growth in the medium term. So, as previously said, growth has remained resilient in 2024, standing at 4.1% compared to 4.2% in 2023. And GDP per capita slightly declined from 1.4 to 1.1. And growth in Somalia is mostly supported by our private consumption and supported by remittances and humanitarian aid. And following private consumption, we have government consumption, which is also moderate but not high. So still in the real sector, in 2024, we can see a reduction of inflation, declining from 6.1% in 2023 to 5.5% in 2024, supported by the decline of food inflation, the easing of international or global prices at the international level, and also mostly supported in the local level, but by improved weather conditions. So, and we can see a disparity of inflation across state. As we can see in Mogadishu, the easing of food price led to a decrease of inflation, and also in Somaliland. But we can see that in Somaliland, food inflation has declined, but it's still remaining high compared to Mogadishu and Portland, given that food prices are declined significantly in those compared to Somaliland. Poverty reduction is projected to stagnate as humanitarian aid falls sharply. So poverty is projected to gradually decline throughout 2024, and food insecurity is projected to increase given all this uncertainty on aid. So in 2024, export was supported by livestock, especially livestock export, and it grew by 67% compared to 2023, especially through livestock export, as I just said. And also we have crops that supported export, vegetable oil, and fishery. On the other hand, we can see that import also grew significantly, outpacing export and leading to a trade deficit of 62% of GDP. So on the import side, import was driven by food. Food import increased significantly in 2024 in Somalia, followed by other products like oil, medical products, and electronics. And one side of also that increased import are investments, especially for construction material and others. So as a consequence, trade deficit increased to 62% of GDP. On the other side, current account deficit narrowed to 8.9%, supported by remittances and grants. So just for the statistic to see how remittances and foreign direct investment and grant supported current account deficit, we can see that external flows and remittances stood at 58% of GDP, and foreign direct investment stood at 5.7% of GDP, which helped to finance the 62.1% of trade deficit. So on the fiscal side, we can see that revenue has improved, still standing at 3% of GDP and still low, but most of spending has been dominated by wage bill, security spending, and administration costs. So grants in 2024 increased significantly, followed by income, profit, and other taxes. So just move to. Okay. So on the spending side, as we can see in the figure, we can see security spending really high, and almost 38% of total spending. And we have civil service wage bill, and now the other part contributing to growth are contributing to spending are goods and services and social benefits. So on the outlook side, so given the uncertainty around aid in the future, in the outlook, growth is projected to stay in between 3 and 4%, influenced by the declining foreign aid. Agricultural production and export are expected to continue recovering, albeit at a slow pace. Improving access to electricity, broadband connection, and financing deepening are expected to support medium-term growth. On the other side, the growth outlook assumes continued political stability and further easing of domestic price in line with expected global mobility price dynamic. So on the risk side, so we have we have the downside risk and also we have the upside risk, which can impact growth on different ways. On the downside risk, which could keep dampening growth in the outlook, are the climate change vulnerability, the drought, and all these climate change issues that the country may face. We have the further reduction of the foreign aid, the global mobility price fluctuation, and the supply chain disruption. Security challenges and political challenges, particularly Somalia will go into election very soon. And also we have the fiscal federalism issue. On the upside risk, furthering structural reform in key sectors such as agriculture, fishing, and all the petroleum sector, which the country is showing some advantage comparative in the future. The progress in fiscal federalism also constitute a positive risk in the outlook. So accelerating revenue mobilization reform and harmonization of legislation and institutional with those of ESA, given that Somalia is already joined the East African community. So all these will have positive impact on trade and also will have a positive impact on growth. So on the conclusion, so just to summarize a few points, the key point on the macro side is the government and the authorities should work to change conditions for private sector growth, jobs, and investment. Accelerate domestic revenue mobilization, which will be covered in the second part in the special topic. Improve the efficiencies of public spending, pay and grading system, non-wage bill optimize government structure. And the last, strengthen institution and the governance. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me now move to part 2, which is largely based on the book that we launched in November last year in Mogadishu toward building Somalia social contract. And many of you have already read that book and attended many presentations. So bear with me as I go through some familiar slides. But just a little disclaimer, we have updated the data, so the scenarios have slightly changed, so it would be good to see the updates. And so the part 2 is on domestic revenue mobilization for enhanced service delivery and social contract. And I want to start again by reminding us what is the social contract, right? It is an agreement, kind of an informal agreement between the government and its citizens, whereby the government provides public services in return for citizens paying their taxes and complying with the legislation. So without basically domestic revenue mobilization and the service delivery are two sides of the social contract, and without each other, like without the social contract or without the trust in the government, there will be less taxes, which means there will be less equality or access to service delivery. And as was many times already mentioned, right, by Honorable Deputy Minister Christina and Abdullahi, Somalia's budget is heavily reliant on external grants. Half of the budget is financed by its own domestic revenue, and the domestic revenue has actually tripled, right, in the last several years, from 2016 to 2024, but still it is quite very low, one of the lowest in the world, standing at 3% of GDP, which of course is not enough to provide those services, full package of services to the citizens. And according to global estimates, but also according to our own estimates, for Somalia to be able to provide full coverage, full set of public services to its citizens, it will need to have its domestic revenue at 15% of GDP, which is quite an increase from 3% to 15%, which may not be possible in the near future, but nevertheless, especially given that the foreign aid is now declining, right? There is a more push for increasing the domestic revenue, but at the same time, we have only with the structure of economy that Somalia currently has, with the economic growth rate, there is only so much that Somalia can do, right? And then according to our estimates again, and according to the estimates of the government, in the medium term by 2030, Somalia will be able to increase its domestic revenue from current 3% to 4.5%, hopefully by 2030. And if FMS revenue is also accounted for, it can reach 6.1% of GDP, but still it won't be enough to cover the type of services that citizens may expect from the government. Basically, with the current level of public spending and also off-budget support that is being provided by foreign aid, we say that basically Somalia government is able to buy only 25% of public services, whereby only 25% of children of school age actually can go to school. Only 20% of population is covered by essential package of health services, and most of it is still provided by NGOs, humanitarian actors, non-state actors, and private sector. And 54% of population live below poverty line. So, and access to these services is even lower among poor households. If you look at these two graphs, the only less than 30% of the poorest households have access to improved sanitation compared to more than 60% of the richest household. And in terms of the access to education, more than 80% of children in the poorest households are enrolled in school, compared to a little bit over than 50% of the richest households. So what will it take to ensure 100% of coverage of population by basic public services like health, education, social protection, and so on? We came up with 3 scenarios that we also explain in detail in the economic update. Basically, the minimal coverage scenario is that the government is now finances at least 25% of public service delivery. Basic coverage is that Somalia is able to finance 50% of public services, whereby education and health is provided for free, right? And then the full coverage is 100% publicly financed public services. And when we compare that that scenarios with the resource envelope available, which is the red line in all these three graphs. So basically, if we look at the minimum coverage scenario, we see that the resource envelope that is available, which includes the own domestic revenue plus external grants plus some projected external borrowings, and it doesn't include the off-budget foreign aid for now. We see that by 2030, Somalia government could potentially, by increasing its revenue to 4.5% of GDP, would be able to finance 25% of public service delivery. But unfortunately, if we look at the basic coverage scenario, now the expenditure are much higher than the available resource envelope. And if you look at the full coverage again by 2030, it will need to really double up its own resource envelope. And now, if we kind of invert that same graph that we had, whereby now in bar columns we have the revenue resource envelope basically disaggregated, whereby we have external grants, external borrowing, FGS revenue here, darker orange, and like this light orange is FMS revenue also added. Then we can see again that together with FMS revenue now accounted for, Somalia can afford something between the minimal coverage scenario and basic coverage scenario. However, to reach the full coverage scenario, we may need to also, as just as an illustrative scenario, right? It doesn't mean that it will be exactly like that. But if we now add official development assistance, which is off budget, these three different shades of red, then there is, and assuming that all of these ODA actually goes just to health, education, and let's say social development, right? Then Somalia can potentially come closer to the full coverage scenario. And again, the difference between the November 2024 report that was prepared in 2024 is that now we have much smaller amount of the official development assistance, which gives us again another reminder that even with the external grants and external borrowing kept at the same level, still Somalia needs to ramp up its efforts on domestic revenue mobilization, but also see how FMS revenue can be increased, because compared to FGS, the darker orange part is the FGS revenue, and this lighter yellow part is FMS revenue. FMS revenue will also need to be increased. And knowing that now that Somalia in the medium term, from its own governance resources, will not be able to reach this 100% coverage scenario, we say that we really need to have a clarity on the role of the government and also non-state actors and private service delivery actors, so that there is a clear role on what function each level of the government, central or FMS, FGS, I would say FMS and local government can deliver. Like, is it a planning function, the regulating, financing function, or distributing function and monitoring function? And also, as much as possible, work with the private sector, international community, and coordinate their efforts to ensure the even distribution of public service delivery. But once again, domestic revenue mobilization will be important. And let me just maybe skip these few slides and go straight to the recommendations. And our recommendations on how to boost domestic revenue is very much aligned with the government's current vision, right? It's very much aligned with the medium-term revenue roadmap. And I think our key recommendation is to continue this firm commitment to the ongoing customs and tax policy reforms. Secondly, modernize tax administration. Thirdly, define the fiscal federalism framework. And finally, engage more with taxpayers for enhanced social contract. And now, if we go by each tax type, On the customs revenue, I'm not going to go through all of the details. You can read it through the slides later or by reading the report itself. But we all know that customs is the largest source of revenue at the moment, right, for FGS, but also for Puntland and Jubaland. But there is still a considerable scope in increasing its efficiency, because if you compare it to peer countries, the percentage to GDP compared to the export and imports level is lower than in peer countries. So the efficiency could be gained through harmonizing tariffs and implementing the valuation tables, basically the ad valorem based valuation, which the Somalia has committed to, but there are of course difficulties in implementing that. The continued implementation of the digital systems like Somalia Customs Administration systems. And then during the process of the implementation of the East African Community requirements, while the standardization of the customs legislation will be important, it will also be important to be able to negotiate gradual implementation of the common external tariff, because there might be some short-term losses expected that can be offset by the efficiency gains if the valuation table is implemented. The next type of revenue is income tax, and again, as Honorable Deputy Minister just mentioned, the new modern income tax law was recently adopted, which is a very important milestone. And even in our conversation with businesses and during the survey of large taxpayers, everyone mentioned that really the tax legislation needs to be modernized. And I think this is a very important step. But what we would like to alert the government is that the policy on the income tax exceptions is not yet very clear. So it would be important to really fix the implementation, the management of tax expenditures at FGS and FMS level to make sure that the income tax gains are fully utilized. And secondly, build the capacity of tax administration to manage the income tax, but also conduct very broad taxpayer communication and education activities so that the taxpayer know about their obligations, but also understand the progressive nature of the income tax, and to avoid any social tensions that can be that can arise with any basically policy that can be implemented. Next, consumption taxation, so indirect tax and non-tax revenue are important sources of revenue also for Somalia. So the key recommendations here is to implement a broad-based sales tax across Somalia. At the moment, it is mostly implemented at the FGS level or Mogadishu basically level, right? But not in FMSs. And then also see how excise taxes can be further developed, and agree on the intergovernmental framework of governing road taxes, which is a big source of also indirect taxation revenue, and also see the opportunities for consolidation and harmonization of non-tax revenue, like administrative fees and other fees. Finally, well, actually, I think not finally, I still have three more. Tax administration reforms are very important, and also global experience showed that sustained tax administration reforms can contribute to 2 to 3 percentage points increase in tax to GDP. And when we surveyed large taxpayers, we asked how to make their tax compliance easier. And their top 4 answers were to improve the tax laws, to enhance taxpayer education, to simplify tax procedures, and to implement fair and transparent tax systems. Therefore, our recommendations are basically stem from these highlights of the survey, and of course the digitalization through the implementation of the integrated tax administration, as again Deputy Minister mentioned, would be important. As mentioned earlier and several times again today, I think defining the structure of fiscal federalism through the ongoing constitutional process will be important. We know it's a challenging task given the political environment at the moment, but really it is the businesses and it is the people who suffer from that, because businesses, they most of the time they face double taxation by both FMS and FGS, and also maybe some non-state actors. There is no clarity on who collects what. There are different tax rates. The taxpayers reported that they deem it unfair that in some FMSs they pay less taxes, whereas in others they pay higher taxes, and so on. So harmonization, but also defining the revenue assignments and the revenue functions, and also the expenditure assignments, like who will be delivering which services, is very important for enhanced domestic revenue mobilization. And now finally, tax morale and social contract. Building, enhancing the social contract is very important. And for that, we really need to work on building the trust of the citizens in the government by maybe having better taxpayer communication campaigns, again, education campaigns, but also showing and demonstrating higher integrity and accountability of tax officials, including through digitalization efforts. And then maybe leveraging, and this came out through our discussions also when we were disseminating the report, the social contract book earlier, what came out of the discussions that we need to also leverage traditional and maybe religious institutions, elders, on educating them on the importance of DRM, but also so that they act as an accountability measures when the government in return delivers the public services, right? So that they see that there is a quid pro quo in terms of paying taxes and getting some services. And finally, in terms of conclusions, so basically, we, based on the governmental estimates and also our estimates, we see that by 2030, and I'm repeating myself, Somalia will be able to raise its revenue to GDP, FGS revenue to GDP ratio to 4.5%, and together with FMS by 6%. But for it to actually sustain its state building and service delivery, the levels should be quite high, like at 9% to GDP in medium term and 15% in longer term. And knowing that Somalia currently is not able to raise its revenue to this level, it will also need to establish those very strong platforms and discussions with the non-state actors, with the private sector, with also foreign official development partners, right, on dividing the role. What is the actual role of the government in delivering service delivery? Is it just coordination, legislation and regulation, or is it also financing, and is it also delivery, at which level, and who is responsible for what, and geographically, whether different geographical areas have equal access to public services, but also different strata of population, do they have equal access to services? And with that, we feel that, again, this is a virtuous circle, right, whereby domestic revenue can be generated only when the citizens see that they receive the public services, but public services can be only delivered when the revenue is raised. So these are our key conclusions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Halima, for that presentation, and Abdullah as well. Now, taking forward, I would like to welcome the panel discussion on this topic. I'm looking if they are online for Dr. Uwais Abdullahi, economic advisor to the Prime Minister of the Federal Government of Somalia, and Farhia Mahmoud from Somalia Public Agenda, as well as presently we have Dr. Abdunur Ali Mohammed, National Economic Advisor and a member of the National Economic Council leadership. So welcome on board. I can see Dr. Awais is there. So who else do we have for here? If you are available, also show us if you're audible. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Welcome on board. And I would like to start, first of all, Dr. Abdunur, who is here, on the issues about what are the current, as the leadership and a member of the Somali National Economic Council, what does it mean for you boosting domestic revenue mobilization in Somalia, and what are the key things that the country or the government is now going forwardly?
Thank you to the Deputy Minister Abdul World Bank, so Christina Country Manager and World Bank Group. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. As a National Economic Council, we are working on the Somali State of Economic Report 2025, and I'm the one who is coordinating it and also writing Chapter 1, which happens to be macroeconomic indicators. So it was very good opportunity for me to see and review this report, which was very good help to us. We, a National Economic Council, highly dependent on World Bank reports. We use them to, even for our policy advices that we send it to the president and the office of the president. So thank you, and keep writing it. The Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance mentioned that the domestic revenue has increased last year 12%, and I was estimating it was more than 10% increase. And mostly that growth came from tax digitization, the modernization of the custom, and also the introduction of the income tax to the private sector. Previously, mostly government officials, government staff, employees were taxed. And looking to that, the increase of the domestic revenue gives opportunity that government can deliver its service to the public, that government can increase also its consumption. And the caveat is, as you increase the taxes and government generates a lot of revenue, that means the consumption is squeezed because of people will have disposable income, which means that after tax income, and that reduces the consumption. And look at the GDP growth of Somalia. The GDP was growing last 2-3 years, except from 2021, where the drought hit by the agriculture sector. The growth was good, but the GDP was not strengthening, and there is a difference between the GDP growth and strong GDP growth, because of our GDP is coming from consumption, which is financed by the remittances that Somalis in abroad send it to the local. Our growth was not coming from investment, especially investment in gross capital formation, which would give the country long-term growth and sustainability. So for the consumption in 2024 was 10 billion, I think. Even that was more than GDP, because of we are consuming, we were buying goods from abroad by money we sent from abroad. So that consumption in Somalia is more than GDP in Somalia. The government's tax can squeeze that consumption. And if people consume less, that means decline in GDP growth in the coming years. So that's the only caveat. But the reforms that Minister of Finance implemented, and the tax collection, and also fiscal discipline, that government was very careful, the employment, the wages, and also security expenditure would give that country the opportunity that government can increase its consumption. The government expenditure is a component in GDP, that's as you know, and also service delivery. The education and the health in Somalia is run by private sector, and they are highly priced, so that needs government intervention. And if government doesn't have such revenue, it can't manage. So I see opportunity in public financial management. What I would suggest is that the growth in government revenue and mobilization of revenue should be matched by fiscal discipline, because of most of the government budget goes to the wages. So that if government is paying too much weight, it means it has less money to invest in the public and also to education and health. But it was, in conclusion, it was very good opportunity, and I'm really would like to see the coming years growing and increasing. And another point is the domestic revenue mobilization should not be only coming from increased tax rate, because if tax rates are increased, that means a decline in tax base. And as economic theories have it, if you increase the rate, as time continues, the tax base will decline, so that the coming years government will realize the decline in government in government's revenue. That's what they call Lavery's curve, which it's the inverted U shape, which means increase in the government's revenue that's coming from the increased tax rate, and then the decline because of people can buy less. I think that the minister and the government, the Ministry of Finance, should be very careful about that. So that's it.
Okay, in regards to that, then flowing to your views about the report, what are the questions you will be asking the economists of the author of the report? Do you have any question about that, or I move to?
No.
Okay, thank you so much. Then I would like to move forward to Dr. Wes Abdullahi, if he has, what are his views on the report of the new Somali Economic Update Report posting domestic revenue mobilization in Somalia and enhancing service delivery to strengthen the social contract. What are your views, and what would be the key questions that you would like to ask the author of the report? Welcome.
Very good morning. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just want to extend my greeting to His Excellency Abdul Qafar Hange, Deputy Minister of Finance, and also the outgoing country manager of the World Bank for Somalia, Christina Samuelson, colleagues from the country management team. Very good afternoon. And of course, it's a privilege to join this conversation around Somali economic performance, and also specifically focusing on how Somalia could strengthen and mobilize sufficient resources for providing essential services and also development needs of the country. I think it's timely in terms of and how Somalia could basically mobilize and resources domestically in order to finance the needs of the development, and also providing essential services, including security, health services, education, infrastructure, and also other basic services that are critical, including electricity and also water. I read the report. It's very comprehensive. It provides not only the last year's economic performance, but also bringing forward prescriptions that the government have to implement in order to maximize revenues and also achieve the target in 2030 domestic resources. And I think that the report also touches on different population in Somalia. Well, I think we are, because the level of years will be similar.
I think there is network issues. Yeah.
Maybe we can go to the next.
Yeah, we will move to the next person, which is Farhia Mahmoud from the Somalia Public Agenda. Farhia, if you're audible.
He's back.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you, but your camera is somehow upside down. Can you turn it the usual way?
Yeah, and maybe he can turn off his camera.
Yeah,
Yes.
maybe you turn off your camera. The network is not quite clear, so you turn off your camera so that the audio will be fine. Hello, can you hear us?
Can you hear me, Hussein?
You can
the
turn
team?
off your camera so you utilize the data The network is not loading clearly.
Can you hear us, Wes?
Oh, okay, maybe.
We go to
I don't know,
the
this-
next.
Yeah.
But we don't know if it works or
it's
not.
Hello, can you hear us? Okay, let's move to Farhia. Can you hear us? Hello, Farhia Mahmoud.
Yes, I can hear
Hello.
you.
Okay, fine. Farhia, thank you so much. Welcome on board. We want to see your views in regards of the latest Somali economic update and what you have find out about it, and if you have any questions to the team here, the thought of the report.
Yeah, thank you so much. Firstly, I would like to address Ms. Katrina Jefferson, the World Bank Country Manager, and the Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. Abdelghafar Hanye, World Bank team, and all distinguished guests. I saw the report, and I was also present in the dissemination forum you held in Mogadishu last year, and it is really very comprehensive from different, aspects of the Somali economy. It's really good update. One thing that caught my eye was the East African community integration with Somalia. And from my understanding, the report was highlighting that the accession to that economic trade bloc will increase the revenue of Somalia, particularly the customs revenue, which is currently underway to, harmonize within the country. So I thought I wrote a report about EAC integration into Somalia, and that study was highlighting that it might decrease the customs revenue, and your report says that it will potentially increase. I'm talking especially on customs revenue. So if you could slightly maybe stand on that.
Okay, so yes, Farhia. So when it gets to that, what is your question?
Yeah, that it really increase customs revenue, the East African community integration.
Yeah, maybe I can.
Okay. You're not yet. Just
No, I think I got it.
you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Thank you. Thank you, Farhia.
So maybe I can repeat. So I think Farhia was asking that the report mentioned that there will be short-term losses in customs revenue associated with the accession to the East African community, right? And your question was, how do we offset those short-term losses in the longer term? That's how I understood that question.
Actually, I was also expecting that outcome, but in some way in the report, I saw that in the long term and in the short term, it will increase the revenue. And I was thinking that it might not be the case for me right now.
Yeah.
But if that is the case, actually, we are in the same page right now.
You get it?
You get it?
Yeah.
He's asking, the expectation was that
Yeah.
in short term, revenue will decline, but in long term, in longer run will increase. And
Yes.
the report says it's 5%. Other way around, so.
No, I think we are more or less aligned, right? That in terms of in short term, indeed, and this was the results of the parallel study led by our senior economist Stella Elieva. The results were that the short term, since there is a lot of trade that's going on with Kenya and other East African community countries, and now internal trade will not be basically taxed by international trade. So there will be short-term losses from that trade. But if Somalia introduces the ad valorem based valuation of customs revenue for other countries, that can offset the losses from the EAC, intra-EAC trade. But in the longer term also, if Somalia harmonizes its customs legislation and regulations with the EAC, and later also with the WTO, there will be the trade facilitation efforts will be enhanced, and that could also provide a positive impact on the customs revenue going forward.
That didn't surprise me, as the report says, because if we have trade deficit for most of the East African countries, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, we have a trade deficit to them. That means they are importing more to us, and we are exporting less to them. And ECA requires us to take up those taxes or custom duties that we are putting in those East African countries. As we avoid that, that would be low custom revenue to Somalia because if we cannot tax them, as we have a regional integration to them. So that didn't surprise me. Both for short term, long term, we'll be experiencing loss in revenue, especially those East African countries.
Yeah, that's why it will be important to negotiate the gradual implementation of these.
I think it will take very long time to implement all those rules. It was supposed to be finalized in the end of 2024 December, and nothing much was done.
Yeah.
Okay, probably I think for here you are very much happy about that answer. Then we are looking forward if Dr. Owais is audible. Hello. Yes, can you hear us now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, but if your internet still looks slow, but if you can just switch off the camera, then maybe audio would be good.
Can you hear me and see me as well?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you and we can see you.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Basically, I'm coming from very, very far away, basically now in Pacific Asia. Well, I think I just want to comment and of course compliment what the World Bank country team has compiled together, the Somali economic update, and I think it has been a successful, exercise for Somalia to, unpack, to, examine how the economy is doing, what are the key issues and critical challenges Somali economy is facing. And of course, also the most important aspect is also providing a very coherent policy prescriptions to, improve the conditions of the economy. And I think this year's focus is mobilizing domestic resources in order to, provide essential services such as education, health, security, which is also a critical, priority for the government to make Somalia stable and also conducive for investment, and also invest sectors that are critical for Somali economy, including agriculture, livestock, and fisheries. And these calls and resources that are domestically available for the government to invest in those sectors. And I think the report also touches very important, policy prescriptions. For example, settling the fiscal federalism, which has been also ongoing for the last 1 decade, and how different level of government, FGS, FMS, could settle and agree on how and what are the level of government is collecting on what, and especially on tax policy. We know that there is a multiplicity of taxation in Somalia. FGS collects taxation in Mogadishu alone. FMS also collects different taxes, which are similar also to what the government, federal government is collecting, local government authorities, and also, the extremist organization like Al-Shabaab also levying significant, taxation to the Somali community and the private sector. So this multiplicity of taxation should be addressed in a way that fiscal federalism provides. And of course, by double agreement in the past, I think, 2-3 years, provides a very comprehensive, a very coherent, an agreement on tax policy and what the federal government is collecting, what the FMS need to collect, and what also other local government and also needs to collect. But this agreement provides the basis, of course, it's important, but also need to be constitutionalized in a way that it will be easier for Somalia to operationalize and implement those agreements. So now the government has passed the first 4 chapters of the constitution, and now preparing to submit to the parliament the remaining 11, which fiscal federalism is one of the chapters that Somali parliament needs to approve and pass. And I think from that, it needs to be operationalized. It needs to be, enforced in a way that different level of government, easier for them to collect what taxation that they have to, according to the constitution. The second important element that the report provides is how we try to, modernize customs revenue. And we know customs constitute a significant amount of taxation in Somalia. And one of the things that the report touches on harmonization between different, boards in Somalia. For example, Bosaso, Berbera, Kismayo, and Mogadishu. How do we get a single unit rate that harmonizes the customs taxation in Somalia? And that's going to be a very, very good opportunity for Somalia to harmonize in order to get, a couple of $100 million extra for the domestic revenue in Somalia to increase. Another area which I think is critical is the minister also mentioned that the government recently, passed the income tax, which is also critical for Somalia's domestic revenue. And I think this income tax to expand not only the government, agencies and employees, but also the private sector and also other international organizations will also present an opportunity for Somalia to raise domestic resources. And when we're talking about taxation and different tax systems that has been yielded successful cases in other countries, shows also convening and advancing policy dialogue with the private sector, with the taxpayers, to make sure that the government negotiates, continually engage, and also consult with the private sector and taxpayers in order to create an environment that's conducive for the private sector to see what they're paying for is providing also return for them. So there's also the question of the social contract or fiscal contract, whatever the private sector and the taxpayers in, the government have to provide essential services like the security, which we see the last couple of years. Mogadishu become a safe not only for the safer for the people, but also an opportunity for Somalia to sell. Mogadishu is safe for investment, is available, conducive for the private sector to thrive. The last, I think, element which is crucial for this report, and I think it is one of the
I think you have to turn off your camera, please, Wes.
Hello, if you can hear us, can you turn off your camera?
yes,
Hello?
I did it. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay, you're audible. Good.
Okay, the last important point that I want to highlight is how we government also improve the administrative aspect of taxation. providing technology, how we how we try to leverage technology in order to maximize taxation in Somalia. We want to bring a new technology in order to improve the administrative and also reduce the corruption, also mismanagement of public funds. And also how we try to identify incentivization of tax officers is also important, where we will need to provide, adequate salaries and incentives for the tax officers in order to avoid corruption and bribe during the tax collection. And I think the last one is, and the report is timely, not only for the World Bank, but also for the government of Somalia.
Okay, Terrorist, thank you so much. Then, other than the fuse, if you have any question, we are quickly wrapping up. So I'll request if you have any question in regards to the report in your final fuse. Okay, I think we shall move to the public side. Anyone, Mary, can you check if there's anybody just have any questions from the other side of the public? We asked them just to drop their questions, or anybody out there? Not yet. Okay. Then I will give the floor to Abdullah and Elma.
Okay.
To wrap up the lecture, Wes has said, and then we shall move later to Apa for her final closing remarks.
Okay.
Yes.
Otherwise, let's check online if anyone has question like that.
Yeah, we have already checked. Then we have been asking them to put the questions, or anybody who wants to speak. Then nobody has said anything yet. Yeah.
Okay, so in this case, we'll move on with the closing remarks.
Okay.
Because this is the following part.
Okay, fine. Let's move forward to Apa Prasad for her final closing remarks. One person has dropped a question.
No, Sonia Plaza wants to make an intervention.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sonia. Sonia, if you can hear us, please come in.
Can you turn on that?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
She's such joy. Beautiful.
Oh, look at her. Was there a question for me? Sorry, I was in the parking garage and I said, stay on mute, this is making it. It's okay. Do you have a question or I was asking to unmute?
No.
No, we can hear you.
No, I think she's asking if there is a question for her. No, there isn't.
Okay.
There is no. Or they were asking her.
Sorry. I was in the parking garage, maybe press the button. Sorry. But maybe
Okay.
you know that we have to front two things on the data, on the customs and everything on the EAC. Under the DRIVE project, we are doing the small trade regime as well. And we have faced the same issues. No? We have different taxes, customs taxes for the different products. So maybe with Stella and the team, we can work it for the small trade regime. Certain of the products can have harmonized, but we found the same thing on the fiscal, too many taxes from different parts, and there has to be need a harmonization for these domestic, the taxes on the domestic revenue. So we're trying to work with customs. And then on the point on the remittances, also today the Ministry of Economy is going to be in an event on the financing for development in Sevilla. And again, it's how we can leverage remittances really to be more, for users of more productive, because if ODA is decreasing, we have to figure it out what's the way that we can leverage more on the remittances on the diaspora. So we are trying now also under DRIVE and the Lost Value Change Fund to see if we can have more investments from the diaspora and slaughterhouses on feeding mechanisms or even meal production. So we can complement that, the private sector with the diaspora from that. So that's my thing in a way, but the harmonization on the domestic mobilization resources is key. We are seeing that from the port point of view, the livestock, especially in the port. Over. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then you'll give the floor to Abha.
Sure, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance, senior government officials, distinguished partners, members of the press, World Bank colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. So as we conclude the launch of this 10th edition of the Somalia Economic Update, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all of you for your participation and engagement in this important event. Thank you especially to you, Minister, for coming here with us today. The flagship report serves as a vital tool for understanding and navigating the economic landscape of Somalia. It, as Christina mentioned, it offers key insights into some of the trends, the risks, the opportunities that shape the country's future. And today we have seen the discussions where we explored the critical role of domestic revenue mobilization in particularly enhancing service delivery and strengthening the social contract. These are two key things which are really very important and very timely, not only for Somalia's journey towards stability and growth, but also some of the work that we're doing critically in the World Bank on these areas. As was mentioned earlier, Somalia's recent economic performance has been encouraging, with growth expanding to over 3 to 4% per year, in fact, even a little bit more. And poverty has been slowly declining, albeit slowly. So the reforms implemented as part of the HIPIC process and the point about Somalia joining the East African community have shown some positive impact on growth, and we hope that this would continue. However, it's very important to stay the course and continue the state building efforts that your government has been taking, Minister, to ensure that institutions effectively support an accelerated growth path, moving towards the government's vision of 2060. And it is important to create job opportunities for youth, as these are really some of the key essential points for reducing poverty and preventing conflict in the country. In addition to the government's state building efforts, there are also other risks such as climate vulnerability, security threats, and declining foreign aid that also need to be addressed. So there is definitely a large agenda for the government, and we are there with you in this, and we really thank you for that partnership. So the efforts to enhance domestic revenue mobilization, as has been said today, are imperative for increasing the dependency on external aid and fostering fiscal independence. As Somalia fortifies its fiscal capacity, it sets the foundation for a more resilient and self-sufficient state capable of navigating the complexities of its own socio-economic landscape in particular. Policies that maximize domestic revenue gains should be prioritized, including expanding the tax base, deepening custom revenue, and improving tax administration to support voluntary compliance and revenue mobilization. All of these, Minister, is something that you yourself have articulated well, and I think we just echo what you say. So the other point was on strengthening fiscal federalism framework, which remains an essential prerequisite to enhance revenue mobilization. And this is more important because service delivery in federal countries remains a shared task among various levels of government and the private sector. And more so in a government where the capacity to provide service delivery gets limited, or to get this extended package of public services, it's important that you have clear rules on fiscal federalism for this shared responsibility of revenue allocation and expenditure assignment between the various tiers of the government. So in closing, I would like to thank the authorities for the partnership and reiterate our strong support to Somalia's development to rebuild institutions and strengthen economic resilience. We are really thankful to be partners in this with you, and I thank everyone again to be here. Shukran.
Thank you so much, Abha Prasad, the practice manager for the economic side. So we have now finalized our launch today, and thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. And now we have closed the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Also, a huge thanks to Christina, since this is going to be for gracing this on the last day, and very grateful to you for all your leadership, your inspiration that has been such a guiding light to all of us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think this will not be the last gathering where you will say bye to Christina. So.
I agree with you.
Yeah, so